Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to thank both yourself and Casper for inviting me on this call. When you asked me to do it, I was a bit reticent because I don't do a lot of these things. Bob was the speaker, I was the behind the scenes person. So for those of you on this call, my name is Gina Hayden, and I worked side by side with Bob Proctor for 36.5 years. I met him when I was 25 years old, and I started working with him when I was 26 years old. And, excuse me, he became one of my closest friends and one of my best allies. I really feel myself privileged to have had the opportunity to work with Bob. He was an incredible human being. I just want to give you a little bit of background kind of on the person he was, the man. You know, you may see him in videos, you may see him on YouTube or in seminars. And certainly the person that you saw on stage was the person he was. There wasn't a hidden agenda with Bob. He was very straightforward. And he always tried to live his life by example. And what I mean by that is he really walked his talk. And in an industry where there are a lot of people, sporting the same goods, talking the same words, he was very congruent. You can tell when a person is incongruent. Words are just noise, but energy doesn't lie. And when you spoke with Bob, there was a one-to-one connection that he made with you, even if you were in an audience of 5,000 people. You always felt like he was talking just to you. He had perfected his craft so well that the audience felt like they were a part of something really special. When I say he walked his talk, he would talk on stage and he would tell people, you know, you need to study every day. And he told people that because he studied every day. That's how he changed his life from somebody who wasn't going anywhere, somebody who had no business acumen, somebody who had more jobs in the first 5 years of his adult career than most people would have in an entire lifetime. He would tell people to practice gratitude. He would go out to his studio every morning at 5 a.m. and he would study. And then one of the things he would do was he would write down what he was grateful for. That was something that was just a part of him. And he was always grateful. He had such an expectant attitude. He really believed that something very special was going to happen to him. He worked on his craft. You know, he would tell our consultants, you can't fluff this. Like, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to perfect your presentation. The audience can feel what you're telling them. And if you're not congruent, they're not going to fall in love with the material like you have fallen in love with the material. He was extremely persistent. He called Prudential Insurance. When Bob first left Nightingale Conant, he thought, you know, I'm going to start with the big boys. I'm not going to start with the small companies. I'm going to go right to the top. So he contacted Prudential Insurance and he spoke with, never got to actually speak with them, but he called the office of Mel Hallcraft every week for a year. Every week for a year to try to get an appointment. He was sick 1 week and didn't call. Do you know that Mr. Hallcraft actually called him to see how he was doing and said, you know what, a guy who's as persistent as you must have something to share with me. And that's how he got into Prudential Insurance. So when I see people, you know, come into our industry and, you know, they have a bad day or somebody rejects them or whatever their story is, and they decide to exit, I think, wow, if Bob had have done that, you know, 65 years ago, we wouldn't have known the man or the legend, you know, that he became. And one of the last things was he was an extremely generous and kind man, both with his time and with his money. he was one of those people that I always thought gave too much. And he would always say, you can't give too much. And my issue was, yeah, but I think people are using you. He said, I don't care if they're using me. He says, if they need something I have, he says, they can have it. And that was a big lesson for me to learn, especially as I was the gatekeeper and I had to discern, who was going to get through to him and who wasn't. And, we made a pact between the two of us. If he had time, he would do something. If he didn't, obviously, he couldn't do it. But he was just incredible. Yeppe and Casper were asking me some of the lessons that I learned from Bob. One of the big lessons I learned was that I wasn't giving, I was trading. And what I mean by that was I am the baby of the family. There are 4 of us. And I was always the one, even though I was the youngest, who would make things happen. If something needed to be done, it was always, just ask Gina and she'll get it done. I think that's why Bob and I got along so well, is that I'm very good at executing things and getting things done. And I remember there was a situation and my sister had just totally ticked me off. She was supposed to do something for me. I'd asked her if she could do it and she said she could, and then she didn't do it. And I was over at Bob's and I was relaying this story. And I said, I asked her to do such a small thing. I don't know why it would have been such a big thing for her to do. And I said, after all that I've done for her. And Bob started laughing. He said, after all you've done for her. And I said, well, I have done a lot for her. And he said, yeah. But he says, Gina, he says, if you're doing something for somebody and expect something back, he says, you're not giving, you're trading. And it stopped me right in my tracks. And he says, energy comes from nothing, moves into form, and out of form and back into form. But it doesn't necessarily come to you from the same source, meaning just because you put out to your family, they're not supposed to give you back. Your giving back or your receiving is going to be from a totally different source that you're not even expecting. And ever since that, it made giving without an intention of anything else but giving so easy and made me feel good about it. One of the other things that he taught me to do was to treat myself well. When I met Bob, I learned very quickly that he expected the best for himself, and what he wanted for himself, he wanted for others. He was very good at treating people well, not necessarily all the time with material things, though he did, but he gave of his time, he gave of his talent. I saw Bob work with more new speakers in our industry than anyone I'd ever known. I mean, he would bring people over the house and we would sit there with them and create a program for them. That is unheard of. People just don't do that. But he realized how much his mentors had impacted his life with what they gave for him, that he wanted to treat everyone the same way. And, people looked at him and said, he's got lots of money, he can afford it. Yeah, he does have lots of money, or did have lots of money. But when he started out, he didn't. But he still lived that way. His suits were always tailored. He bought custom-made shoes. And he did that because he wanted to raise his level of vibration to where his goal was. And his goal was set really high. The last thing that I think is probably the most important thing was he taught me about leaving everyone that I meet with an impression of increase. And when I first heard that concept, I thought, wow, that's kind of a selfish thing, because when you make somebody feel good, you feel good. I mean, I think that's part of why you do it. But when you go out of your way to try to make every person you come in contact with feel as though they are the most important person while you're speaking with them and while you're in their presence, you will be rewarded with gifts in life that you can't even imagine. And you never know the type of day that a person is having. A small gesture of, you know what, you look really good today, but you've got to mean it. You can't give a compliment and it be, airy-fairy. It's like, it's got to be congruent, because again, if it's not, the words won't resonate with the feeling that you're trying to get across to that person. So he was really good at giving his attention to people. And when you were in his presence, he really made you feel good. There was just something good about him. I think because he liked himself so much, it was easy for him to deal with people and to, like others. When I meet with people, one of the first questions that they ask me is, how has this material changed your life? And for me, it opened up a totally different world than I was accustomed to. I operate with a totally different mindset. When and let me say, I think experience and wisdom will do that to you. But for me, when I was starting out with Bob, again, I was young, I was 26. I was a bit of a loner. I didn't really like crowds. And I think that was probably a good thing, because Bob was a loner as well. So we could be in each other's company for hours and not say anything. We could both be doing our own things on our computers or whatever. And I was always tentative and afraid to do stuff. I was terrified when I started working with him, because he had set the bar so high that I thought, I am totally out of his league. I mean, everything that he did, he gave his best every day. And his best from day to day may have changed, but every day you got 100%. He never followed the crowd. He was always on the leading edge. And he never knew really, he knew where he was going, but he never knew how he was going to get there. So the road was sometimes, long and windy, but he always knew he was going to get there. And that, for me, was a huge thing, because I was always on one of those A lines where I had a goal. I'd probably set a goal that I knew I could achieve. And if I went anywhere, I went up to a B goal where, if I did this, and if this money came in and somebody gave me that, I could probably do it. And I learned that when you step out, when you really want something and you step out, the universe is going to meet you halfway. A lot of us are expecting things to come our way when we're sitting at home wishing and thinking. I think partly that's a bit of the message that was askew in The Secret. The Secret did more for our industry than I think anything ever will or ever has up to this point. Obviously, there are going to be things that come along. But I think it left people with the impression that you can just sit at home and think about wanting something. You can't. It's the action and reaction. The Secret wasn't about the law of attraction so much as it was the law of vibration. The law of attraction is a secondary law. The law of vibration is the primary law, and it states that everything moves, nothing rests. And to get yourself on a higher frequency, you need to step out and act and do something differently. That is universal, regardless of what you want to do in life. If you want your life to be different, your daily routine has to be different. It cannot be the same. If you want to get in shape, you can't sit on the couch and just visualize yourself working out. Although there have been studies that have linked people working out in their mind, and they get a similar reaction in their bodies. You need to step out and take action, and the universe will respond in in so many ways in your favor and will take you to your goal. You know, while I'm talking about Bob setting the standard so high for us and setting the standard so high for the consultants, because they really are his extension now in the world. Although our company will continue and do what it can do, people like Casper and Jeppe are a direct descendant from Bob, teaching what Bob has taught them and the material that has changed their life so greatly. Bob and I were flying back from an event and we were sitting across from each other, and it had been a long event and we were about an hour out from home. And I said to him, you know, I said, when I started to work with you, I said, I never thought that I would be able to live up to your standard. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, you set the bar so high. I said, I came from, you know, nowhere, and I'm working with you, this man who is on a mission to change the world one mind at a time. And I said, you set the bar so high, I really just didn't think I could do it. And he started laughing and he grabbed my hand and he said, you knocked that bar down, kid, and you set your own bar. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, that's perfect Bob, leaving me with an impression of increase, all the while I'm telling him how much I think of him. I mentioned Casper and Jeppe. They are some of our top consultants. They have used the material that they're wanting you to join them in, and it has changed their lives dramatically. They are always in our top group every quarter. We used to, we stopped doing it just this past quarter, but we used to send our top consultants 4 questions. And the purpose of doing it was to acknowledge them in a printed format. We had other ways of acknowledging them, but that was one. But it was also so that we could acknowledge them in front of their peers, because they have done the work. They have been where you are. They have been where our new consultants are and have stayed the course, set their goal, and really have achieved something spectacular. But one of the things that we did in that recognizing piece is we asked them different questions each quarter. And we did that because we thought it would really have an effect on the other consultants in the field who might read something of a similar nature to where they are in their life and say, oh my gosh, if they can do it, I can do it. As I was preparing for this call, I remembered some of the things that both of them had sent in, and there were a couple that really struck me. One question that we had asked the group was, what is your proudest moment to date? And Jeppe answered, every time I receive positive feedback from my clients, I am so proud of them. And I thought, wow, it doesn't get much better than that. And Casper, one of the questions that we asked was, what was the turning point in your life when you said, enough is enough? I'm got to stop playing around with this and really do something of significance. And I want to read it verbatim. Now, I had to alter it a little bit just because the language barrier. But in essence, what he said was, and his English is very good, so please don't get me wrong. In essence, it was, when people would ask me, how long am I going to try to get this business going? I realized right then and there that I would give this business the rest of my life, no matter the results. It means everything to me. I am totally committed. And one other question that caught me was, again, Casper, we asked what their why was, because when you're setting a goal, if your why isn't big enough, If it's not going to get you through the hard times, you're lost. You are just lost. And his why was, I have one life. I want to make a difference. So those are the type of men that you are dealing with. They are on a mission to teach what has made such an impact in their own lives. And let me tell you, their lives have changed dramatically. When I see them writing in the things that they're doing and how they're treating themselves and the dreams that they have for themselves, they didn't have that when they came into the business 7 or 8 years ago when they joined us. So if you're looking to make some really grand changes in your life, you can do it. You're here today, I'm assuming, because you're intrigued with something that either was sent out to you or they reached out to you. Maybe you're looking for a little something different in your life. Maybe you're looking for a hand up or a shortcut. Let me tell you, there aren't any shortcuts in life, but you can gain as much from the knowledge that they have used, that they have gained, and it can cut your success time by a quantum leap. You don't have to go through all that they went through to get to where they are. I want to talk about something because I think it's really poignant. When Bob went to that Prudential office and he started with them, he told them that he could make a difference in their business. And Mel said, took out a file folder of brochures and threw it on the desk and said, these people said the same thing. What makes you different? And Bob says, I'm different. I'm the person who's going to make the difference. So they agreed. And Bob said, you know what? Anyone can do something with the people who really aren't working. He says, I want your top people. He says, I want to work with them. They said, okay. So they gave him the top people. He passed the test and he ended up working through Prudential. But what happened was he asked the people to do 2 things differently, just 2 things differently. He didn't talk to them about insurance. He didn't talk to them about anything other than who they were, the potential they had, and what they had to give to their clients. He says, if you will commit to doing 2 things, he says, your business will change night and day. He says, it's neither illegal nor immoral. He says, are you in? They all raised their hands. I want you to be in front of a live prospect every morning at 9 a.m., hand to hand, shaking hands. Personal contact is the key to success. And back then in the 60s, it was. Now we have so many other forms of marketing and sales calls and everything else. We probably have lost that. And he says, the second thing I want you to do is ask everyone you meet to purchase $100,000 of insurance. $100,000 of insurance back in the late 60s, early 70s was a lot of money. You don't have to sell them, you just have to ask them. Prudential's bottom line went up. We had heard it was hundreds of millions of dollars. One of their top VPs told us it was over $1 billion by doing those 2 short things. Can you imagine if something that this program that you're considering brings you and you do 1 or 2 things differently that will have that much of an impact? It doesn't have to be a financial impact. It can be a better relationship with your kids. It can be, a better relationship with your spouse, or, wanting to get a new house, whatever it is for you. But can you imagine the growth that you will experience by having that outside force in your life? Something that's going to keep you going. Bob always said that faith and fear both demand something. You believe in something that you cannot see. and that it's your choice. You are looking at something that in your mind may be a lot of money. Relative to what? What's it costing you not to do it? Is what Bob would always ask me if I wanted to do something. And there's a great quote by Kyle Cease. He says, you can measure what you're going to lose, but you can't see what you'll gain. And that is so true. You have no idea what lies ahead of you. And you're only a decision away. Decision is the door. It's the door to the other side. It's the door that you want to step through to get to where you want. I just want to finish really quickly with there in the first chapter of Thinking into Results on a Worthy Ideal, there is an article on decision that we have put in there for you, and it's really good. But the first paragraph is, there's a single mental move you can make, which in a millisecond will solve enormous problems for you. It has the potential to improve almost any personal or business situation you'll ever encounter. And it could literally propel you down the path to incredible success. We have a name for this magic mental activity. It's called decision. You are at a point right now where you're deciding what you're going to do. Don't ask anybody what you're going to do. Do this for yourself. This is something you're going to do for you. I can guarantee you we have enough stories and I have enough history with the company over the past 36 and a half years that if you bet on yourself, you will always win. We have stories from people who were going to take their lives, who started studying and finding out how great they were and the potential they possessed and are doing so well now. We have stories of kids who were in school failing. The possibilities for you right now are endless, and all it takes is a decision. Will you join us? Yes or no? It's really simple. I want to thank you. I have enjoyed myself thoroughly. I'm sorry I probably went a little over time, got a little bit rambunctious, but Casper, I am going to pass the meeting back to you. And I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity, and be kind to yourself. When you kid for yourself, kid with yourself, kid up. Don't kid down. Don't make disparaging marks upon yourself. Your subconscious doesn't have a sense of humor. Be kind to yourself and treat everyone like you want to be treated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gina. I want to give you an applause. You can probably not hear everybody applauding, but I must say so many great points you gave us there. And yeah, 36 and a half year, that is quite some time, right? Can I just, before we round this call up, ask you, because I think this is on the mind of a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but at least it was for both Casper and me before we joined PGI, and I assume some people here might also be considering joining now. When you feel limitation, when you say, but the money is not in my bank account, so I want to do this, but the funds are not there. Like, what's the best way to go from there?
You know, again, I have seen enough times in my own life and in the lives of clients, especially who, you know, ask for whatever money it is, and 2 weeks later they get a check from something that they hadn't expected. If you step out and act on what you really want is going to come to you. Bob used to always say, if you have to ask your grandmother to borrow the money, because that's where he used to always go to his grandmother, do it. Your life is going to be so different. Don't let your current circumstances. Think about what you want. You have a marvelous mind, and you have the ability to create a beautiful image of what you want. Right now, you're looking at your bank account and you're letting that dictate whether or not you're going to do something. That should have nothing to do with it. The only thing that you should be thinking about is, am I able and am I willing? If you can ask yourself those two questions and you can answer yes, you're on the right track. Otherwise, you're going to be in this loop of just looking at your bank account, just looking at your report card, just looking at the sales sheet. What about looking at the sales sheet and saying, you know, I only brought in $5,000 the past month. How can I double that? Work on a really big idea that's going to get you excited and going to get you out providing more service, because the bigger service you provide, the more reward you're going to receive.
Awesome.